Good afternoon, everybody. This is Bassam Haddad. I'm the director of the Middle East and Islamic Studies program at George Mason University, and I am here today to present another installment of the MEIS Podcast. This is a very special installment, not least because we are hosting for the first time our MEIS alumni, at least 3 of them who have done stellar work at MEIS, at the Middle East and Islamic Studies program, as well as what they are doing right now, which is what we're trying to find out. This is Alumni Speak Out, or Alumni Profiles, and we have with us the fantastic group of young scholars, Kylie Broderick, Jordan Cohen, and Jon Hoffman. So thank you all for joining us. This is a delight. How are you all?
Doing awesome. How about you?
Jordan, how you doing? Don't be shy.
No, I'm good. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. Are you kidding? I mean, in the classroom, you guys were a pleasure to have, and outside the classroom, our conversations, our many discussions, many of which continue until today in some way or another. So I'm very excited to have you, and we are going to start with, we're going to get right into it. And as I shared with you, these events, these podcasts are not intended to be stuffy. They're intended to be conversational. You are kings and queens. The world is yours. So just relax, share with us what you are doing right now, what your research is about, how you benefited from being at the MEIS program, and where you might be headed. Let me first introduce Kylie Broderick, and then we will go to the other gentlemen. I'll share a little bit about your bios, and then we'll move forward. Kylie Broderick is a PhD candidate and Mellon Fellow in Modern Middle East History at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. She also is the managing editor of Jadaliyya and co-editor of the Resistance, Subversion, and Mobilization page there. At the National Humanities Center, she teaches the Introduction to the Modern Middle East course. Her interests are in the political economy of the Middle East, as well as histories of gender, social mobilizations, and socioeconomic class construction in Lebanon and Syria. Kylie has published on various topics related to the Middle East, and she joins us, for which we are extremely fortunate. Hi Kylie, how you doing?
Hi Bassam, I'm doing good. Hopefully I'm being loud enough now. I'm trying to.
You are good. Yes, absolutely. You're good.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, you're awesome. We're also joined, I'm going to go to the next person. We're also joined by Jordan Cohen, who is a policy analyst. Ooh, that's awesome. Who's a policy analyst in defense and foreign policy studies at the Cato Institute and a PhD candidate in political science at the Schar School of Policy and Government at George Mason University. His dissertation is about when Congress restrained the president's use of arms sales as a tool of foreign policy. He's also a co-author of the Cato Institute's Arms Sales Risk Index. This index was cited by Senator Ben Cardin when he announced the Enhancing Human Rights in Arms Sales Act of 2019. Jordan has also published an academic article at Strategic Studies Quarterly, analyzing if and when risk analysis contributes to a president's decision to sell weapons. Jordan frequently writes op-eds on arms sales and related issues. His commentary on foreign affairs has appeared in a number of publications, including NBC News, The Hill, Defense One, Defense News, Strategic Studies Quarterly, Stick Media, and the National Interest. Welcome, Jordan.
Hey, thank you, and thanks for reading the very long intro. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. A long intro is good, my friend. And finally, last but not least, Jon Hoffman, who is a doctoral candidate at George Mason University. His research focuses on Middle East geopolitics and political Islam. Jon's work has been featured in academic platforms such as Middle East Policy, Digest of Middle East Studies, Durham Middle East Papers, and so on. The list is long, and every other month I see something by Jon, which is very impressive, as well as policy-oriented platforms where he publishes, such as Foreign Policy, The Washington Post, World Politics Review, and Lawfare. He holds a BA in Global Affairs and an MA in Middle East and Islamic Studies, both from George Mason. Ahlan wa sahlan, Jon.
How are you, Bassam?
I'm doing very well. And for some reason, Kylie's lower third is not. Uh, okay, there it is. There we go. So, what I'd like to just discuss with you, very casually, is what are you doing right now? What are you working on right now? And anything that you'd like to share about your present work. We'll start with Kylie.
Okay, yeah. So I'm in my third year of my PhD program at UNC Chapel Hill in the history department focused on the Middle East. I became a candidate at the beginning of this semester. Right now, I'm mostly focused on teaching. I'm teaching my own course on the history of Palestine and Israel, and I'm teaching another course on Introduction to Arab Cultures, both at UNC. And then I'm also teaching a course at the National Humanities Center, the one that you read in my bio, that is Introduction to the Modern Middle East. But when I eventually am able to return to my dissertation, hopefully next semester, my dissertation basically seeks to understand how women in Beirut and Damascus between the late 19 teens and the 1930s mobilized various discourses around work and working in order to liberate themselves from the crises of this time period, i.e., sort of the onset of colonialism, the end of World War I and the famine, and various other legacies out of this time period. And the women who were seeking to mobilize discourses around work were pulling from a multiplicity of discursive traditions, such as local ones, Ottoman ones, European ones, Islamic ones, Turath, that kind of thing. And at this moment, I'm mostly focused on how these discourses as working equals liberation implicitly relied on ideologies of capitalism, but probably will expand that to include sort of incipient labor movements and labor organizing in the 1930s. Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Excellent. Thanks, Kylie. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things you've written in the past few months, whether even for, as research? So we're not just looking at publications. I'd like to also know what you've been writing in general. So what would be some of the things you've written recently?
Yeah, so this semester, my writing, I usually write a lot. This semester has been a lot less writing, mostly because nobody told me that when you teach, you end up writing a lot. Because it's all like writing lectures about what you're going to be teaching, especially as somebody who is a relatively new instructor like myself. Most of my time has been just geared towards researching what I'm even going to be teaching. And that's doubly so for having to do two very different classes. But in the past year, I've published stuff on how UNC needs to engage in BDS campaigns. I've written, as I shared with you, how we can study the sort of onset of capitalism in the Middle East and what that means in a kind of moral way. I've written variously about video games and other sort of topics about the Middle East, capitalism, gender, and activism in the United States, both as grad students and as people who study the Middle East from the United States. Do you want me to say more?
No, I was speaking on mute actually because that's what
Okay.
happens in COVID. Yes, absolutely, and it will never stop. So thank you, Kylie. We'll open things up a little bit more in a little bit. Let me go to Jordan. If you can share with us, Jordan, what you're working on right now. Tell us about your dissertation, your current work, and some of your current writing.
Yeah, sure. So thank you again for having us on. So in September, I started as a policy analyst at the Cato Institute. Here, I do a lot of stuff related to arms sales and budget, the economics, kind of the defense budget, which is ever rising. That is kind of generally where I'm focused. I'm stuff with kind of alliances and politics, but that's kind of on the back. Part of that is because my dissertation is on arms sales and when the president is restricted by Congress on the use of weapon sales. The answer is very infrequently. And so the question I'm asking is why. So a lot of my time this past few months has been kind of talking to staffers in Congress and figuring out kind of what goes on in the weapon sales industry and why Congress has such a difficult time, and then taking that and writing in my dissertation or op-eds or policy analysis for Cato.
And is there a publication you'd like to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, so the newest one I have that is about arms sales specifically was in Inkstick. It's with Trevor Thrall, and we talked about Afghanistan and small arms. The latest solo publication I have is in Breaking Defense, and it's about the House version of the National Defense Authorization Act. It sounds like the Senate version's coming out this week, so I think that's actually a pretty important one because there's a lot of legislation on weapon sales in the House NDA, and by a lot, I mean the highest I've seen since 1976 is 2 different amendments to it, and this one has over 20. So it's a pretty big bill to that end. We'll see what the Senate does. And so I think this is kind of important because by the end of this week, we should know if Congress is actually going to do a lot that will restrict arms sales to places like Saudi Arabia.
Thanks, Jordan. We'll come back to you with a couple more questions about a number of things. So let's go to Jon. Jon, I know that you're a pretty busy man, like everybody here, and I'd like to ask you to talk to us a little bit about your experience right now in the PhD program, your dissertation, your work, and maybe a little bit about what you've been working on, what you've been writing.
Sure. So I'm currently a PhD candidate at the Shar School, like Jordan. I'm probably far less busy than Jordan or Kylie, who it sounds like are drowning in work. I'm currently TAing this semester, so I'm not teaching my own courses. But my dissertation is looking at the competing religious soft power strategies of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE post 2011. So how after the Arab uprisings, they sought to couple religion with their broader foreign policy strategies. And extended here, I'm also working with Dr. Peter Mandeville, who's also part of MEIS, over at Georgetown on the Geopolitics of Religion project. And in terms of other things I've been working on, I guess I'll highlight a recent academic article that I did looking at great power competition in the Middle East, the renewal of competition between the US, Russia, and China. But instead of from the perspective of the great powers, it's from the perspective of the regional actors and how they view the return of great power competition and how they're using it for their own advantage. And then most recently, I had an article published in Foreign Policy looking at critically looking at the U.S. UAE relationship, saying that there needs to be a bit of a readjustment here. And other than that, just getting ready for the proposal of or the defense of the proposal, really.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thanks, Jon and Jordan and Kylie. I am very excited that we are having this conversation. And where am I? There am I. Okay. So, yeah, this is excellent. I mean, there are other people who have joined the program that are now doing their PhD work, and we are very proud of them. You guys are very much sort of in. Well, some of you are in the news, all of you are in the news at some level, and I wanted to reach out to you first. We're gonna then talk about others who have gone to private sector, who have gone to work with government directly, and who have probably gone overseas, and others who have gone overseas. But let's talk a little bit about how you feel that the MEIS program, including the work you've done in classrooms, the work you've done with instructors separately or in classrooms, or in classrooms, and the entire environment at George Mason and the MEIS program, how did it equip you to do what you're doing right now? So if you can share some of this with us, that would be great. Kylie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, without this program, I would have never been able to get into my PhD program in the first place. So I have you in specific, Bassam, to thank for that, but also the MEIS program, kind of generally speaking, for setting me up with the tools that I needed to be able to be at least a decent history scholar, right? Yeah, I learned critical analysis skills and ability to engage in primary sources, even where to find primary sources, both of which have not just been helpful in terms of me being able to do my dissertation or formulate a topic, but also in teaching. Now that this semester in particular, I'm focused much more on the teaching aspect of being a PhD candidate. But I think aside from my ability to be decently analytical in this space, this program also equipped me with more social skills that are really essential for being a successful PhD student that almost nobody emphasizes, I think, except for MEIS. I learned how to be part of a network, help build a network, and be within sort of a network of Middle East scholars that have been really essential for not just my capabilities as a scholar, but also my mental health. I've made lifelong friendships coming out of MEIS. And so for those reasons, I'm really grateful for MEIS till this day.
And may I ask, what is it about the George Mason / MEIS environment besides just the instruction and the more direct involvement with instructors, professors?
Yeah.
How might it how has it helped, or is it one of the elements that you would consider that added or enhanced your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that MEIS has a really great array of faculty members that are interested in cultivating younger scholars for more, like cultivating them as more than just scholars, but also as sort of thinkers and people. The fact that MEIS is attached to the Arab Studies Institute was something that was really essential to me. As you can see in my bio, and as you know personally, Bassam, I'm still involved in Arab Studies Institute through Jadaliyya mostly, which is the place where I started to belong to a network of Middle East scholars, and taught me to be like moral, I guess, in a different kind of way that most master's programs do. So I think that it's the fact that MEIS is attached to various kinds of nonprofits, like Arab Studies Institute. Maidan is another thing that it's attached to that I forged connections with. It's also close enough to DC that I was able to network within DC and also make friends within DC, scholar friends within DC as well. So it's kind of a very well-placed program and has deliberately cultivated a network of different professional organizations that you as a young scholar can sort of join and become more acclimated to the professional side of Middle East studies, not just the scholastic side.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kylie. Let's move to, and then of course, I mean, I know that there's a lot going on that I could ask you about, but I'm trying to be mindful of the time and the promise I made to you that we will not take up too much time. So let's move to Jordan. If you can share with us, Jordan, your experience at MEIS and how might it have helped you get to where you're at. I mean, any master's program is going to help you move forward to a PhD program in various ways. If you can tell us, like, what was a distinct dimension or aspect, or some distinct aspects of the MEIS program that you found useful, and feel free to say none of it was, because just be truthful.
No. So I was thinking about this question kind of before we came on, and I came up with a lot, but two that I think maybe kind of, one is probably a little bit unique to me, and the other is probably something I know Kylie just said it, and my gut is Jon's going to say something similar too. So the one that's unique-ish, I mean, we all may agree, is that I thought, like, and for my dissertation now, the political economy readings we did, like Nazia Ayubi's book, Bassam, your work, all that stuff is really useful for my dissertation, because arms sales are nothing if not like the perfect field to study using those tools. So just for me specifically, that was really, really useful. The other thing that was really useful, and this is kind of playing off something Kylie said, is that one of the things I learned through Jadaliyya status is that, yeah, we do a lot of academic research and it's important within our circles, within our networks, but there are people outside of that network that care about it too. And learning how to translate it to a variety of different audiences, for me, like, led to the greatest discovery I've ever found. And Jon's going to roll his eyes because I've said this to him 8,000 times, but that, like, anything you write has use, right? Whether that's an academic article, or that is a policy piece, or that's an op-ed or a podcast, right? All this is really useful. And so I think for me, that was a really good way to figure out kind of what I wanted to do in life, and it was what started me on the path that led to me being a policy analyst at a think tank.
And I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked Kylie. Was there something in terms of the environment at George Mason and at the MEIS program beyond the classroom that you felt, even beyond MEIS, right? This is more about George Mason as well as MEIS, whether it's events, whether it's interaction with scholars. I know that at some point we've gone out with scholars or hung out with scholars with you being around. I mean, do these things matter? And do you recall anything do you recall whether that environment had an impact of sorts?
Oh, it absolutely did, because I think any like kind of master's of arts degree or PhD I mean, we may not want to admit it, there's an element of professionalism, right? It's just a different sort, right? It's teaching you to be a professional, different community. And I think MEIS is really good at this. So Bassam, I'm just going to use an example. The first time I met you, you said, and I was like, "Hi, Dr. Haddad." And you said, "Don't call me that, and don't call me sir, because that's just weird. Call me Bassam." And like, that is actually a really useful skill beyond it being like a really kind of just funny introduction. It's a really useful skill because at some level, like when you are a PhD student, when you are a PhD candidate, you are learning how to be a professional in environments with people that have PhDs. And I think the MEIS program is really good at that. I think George Mason as a whole is really good at that. They treat their kind of masters and grad students generally pretty well. I've never had really an experience where I've been like, the university treats its grad students poorly. So I'm kind of a fan of that. I think MEIS is really well placed because you can take classes with people in other programs, and that's good to kind of get a different experience. Like I remember I took a political science class with somebody that worshipped at the altar of Bill Kristol, and that was interesting. I disagreed completely with everything he said, but it was an interesting experience, and I think for me that's another really useful thing from the MEIS program.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you very much, Jordan. Jon, you can copy the answers of others if you don't want to come up with your own, but tell us a little bit about what has been a positive experience and a stepping stone at MEIS in any respect.
Yeah, so I would certainly say that the part of MEIS that I enjoyed the most was the interdisciplinary approach that it took to looking at the Middle East, because, and like Kylie and Jordan hinted towards, you got a taste of everything. You got a taste of religion. You got a taste of politics. You got a taste of economics, of culture, of everything. And the way that the degree is structured, you really got to shape it and mold it how you wanted to proceed, like which one of those you really wanted to hone in on. And with such an array of scholars in the program, they can help guide you in those directions. They can put you in contact with their scholarly communities, and it was really a great stepping stone to figure out, okay, I'm really interested in the Middle East, but if I want to go further into either a job or into a PhD, what specific discipline do I want to go into, through which you use that lens to look at the Middle East. And like for me, it was political science. And, I benefited from staying at the school and being able to continue working with people like you and Peter and everyone. So it's just been great.
Awesome. And anything about the environment, because this is something that I'd like to focus on as somebody who's been with the program since the beginning, and I'm interested in whether you see added value in terms of the environment, the events, the things outside the classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been at Mason for undergrad, master's, and the PhD. So I've seen the school from so many different angles. But the 2 years in the MEIS program was by far the most enjoyable because of the way, like how willing different professors were to reach out with you, reach out to you outside the classroom. How great the other students in the program were, getting to build those connections. And one nice thing about Mason is how diverse Mason is. So you will be able to meet people from every walk of life, and look at issues from every perspective. So that's really one of the cool parts about Mason.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Thanks, everyone. So basically, you guys, maybe we should have a drink because you're like a little tense, which is fine. Maybe I'm a little tense too. So, but this is awesome. I really appreciate your candor and your honesty in addressing all of these issues. And you'll be surprised how important this will be for people in the MEIS program right now who would like to know, what is this going to get me? And as we move forward with these podcasts and these conversations, it'll be a wonderful archive for people who actually come to this program going forward. So thank you very much. Before I let you go, we have our last dimension, or our last talking point, which is what are you planning to do with your current degree once you obtain it, where I have no doubt that you all will, and you'll pass and finish and complete with flying colors. So I'll start with Kylie. What do you want to do with this PhD?
Well, first things first, I think 1:31 on a Monday, a drink would be nice right now. It's almost the end of the semester for me, and it's been a lot of learning experience. One thing I forgot to say while I was talking about what I got out of this program is a different sort of related element to the ability to enter and be part of a network of scholars is that a lot of the people that I met through the MEIS program and through you in specific, Bassam, and the events that were sort of as much a part of the program as actually taking classes, was learning how to be a scholar activist as well, which is an essential part of how I see the academy and what I do in the academy, but also what I continue to keep planning to be within the academy. So that's like one dimension, is that whatever job I end up with after this is over, I know how to be a good activist and be in good solidarity with the people that I'm studying and making money off for a living in the Middle East. Okay, so that's one thing. As far as like what I'm going to do with my life after this, as a really well-spoken person once said on Twitter, I simply do not dream of labor. And so I don't know what I'm going to end up doing. I think one obvious choice is becoming a professor, if that's even possible, given the really heinous job market right now. But if not to become a professor, I've become really interested in working with K through 12 teachers, which is something I've gotten into since I moved back to North Carolina to begin this PhD program. There's a lot of opportunities to work with K through 12 teachers in integrating more Middle East focused content into their curricula. And so that's another avenue that I've been looking into. But who knows? I mean, I have a few years probably before I end this program, and we'll see what the job market looks like at that point in my life. That's a cop-out answer, but the only truthful one I have.
No, I mean, some of the most thoughtful answers that I've heard since I entered into my PhD program at Georgetown in 1994. Wow. Some of the most thoughtful answers I've heard is I'm not sure. And that was a time when PhD students had a direct line to the job market. Well, to the extent that they did then, it was much more direct than it is now. Now the options are more varied simply because of the, how the market developed or did not develop or shrunk or changed. So no, that's thoughtful, and I'll take that any day. Jordan, how do you see this PhD panning out in terms of prepping you for the future? It looks like you already have an office, and you're already you're already wearing a tie.
Yeah. No, I have I'm what do they call it? Professional. So whatever that means. But yeah, no, I think for me the PhD has two real main purposes, at least in my future. One is, I think, generally speaking, without the PhD program, I would have never, and without the MEIS program, to be fair, right? I would have never had the skills needed to do this job. And so to me, finishing the dissertation kind of is just closing the chapter on that, which I really want to do. I taught my own classes for a few years. I have loved grad school as a whole, and it's kind of feels nice to finish. But the second thing is, I mean, every dissertation can be a series of articles or a book. And so kind of my next step after finishing the dissertation will be to take that and turn it into a series of articles or a book. I think generally speaking, like after I finish, my future plans are to one day drink it, is kind of said 1:35 on a Monday.
Oh, you can do that now.
Yeah, I don't have any in my office. That's the problem.
Where's everybody? Okay, there we go. So, well, we thank you. Thanks, Jordan. This is exactly the sort of thing like people would like to hear. People looking at what the different paths might be. Kylie talked about a hybrid path, about both scholarship and advocacy activism. Jordan, you're already at a think tank while you're finishing your PhD, and you have these options. And then I'm sure Jon won't have a problem based on his publishing record. But Jon, tell us, what are you looking at in terms of what you want to do with this PhD?
I think I'm in the same camp as Kylie here. I'll take whatever I can get, essentially, and but I think her point about the scholar activism is really important, because I think MEIS gives you a really great way of approaching the region from a critical perspective, whereby you really deconstruct a lot of existing narratives, and you can come really then to advocate on behalf, like she said, like on behalf of the people that you're studying it, in a way, making money from, and your ability to advocate on behalf of them, and the skills that MEIS teaches you to maintain, on the one hand, your scholarly credibility, and on the other hand, this kind of activist credibility. I think whatever I end up doing, I will want to be able to couple those two things moving forward.
Thank you. Thanks, Jon. I think you're being a little modest, but I'm sure that the future is wide open for you, just like it is for all of you, and actually for many of the MEIS students who went on, if not most, who went on to stay within the orbit of academia or analysis, and that is something that we featured early on in our announcement of the start of the program, and the kind of unique, if not, well, the kind of emphasis we have in the program regarding studying the region on its own terms and in context, and not necessarily to study it in order to manipulate it per se. But even the policy work that some of you have done, which I have seen, has incorporated a good dose of the importance of understanding the region in itself, not just as a foreign policy object, and that is actually quite encouraging. So thank you all so much. And before I let you go, so that we could claim that we did this within 45 minutes, before I let you go, I'd like to ask you to share with us any last words or statements or commentaries that you'd like to leave us with, including anecdotes or anything that comes to mind that has to do with your experience at GMU and the Middle East and Islamic Studies program. And we'll start also again with Kylie.
Last thoughts. This is a curveball question because I was expecting 3, but that's fine. I don't know. I really liked also, I have to say that like just living in the area was one of the best times of my life. I went into the master's program right after my BA at NC State in North Carolina. And I finished my MA and continued to live in the area and work for Arab Studies Institute as sort of my full-time job until I went to my PhD program. And so this is yet again another cop-out answer. And this is why my students hate me, because I refuse to answer the question at hand. But I don't know, just like the entire experience of going to MEIS as a scholastic sort of maturing program for me was matched by the fact that it was like a socially really vibrant place for me and a place where I learned to be a good activist. And so it was kind of the place where I became a real adult in a lot of different ways. And MEIS is unique in its emphasis on studying the region on its own terms, emphasizing political economy because of the faculty that are that really work within the program. But also it's just like a cool place to live and study and become integrated into activist networks. So that's kind of my reflection on my time there.
Thanks, Kylie. Do you have any questions for your fellow alumni from MEIS?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I'll think about it.
I'll relay them. Well, you guys are on the same email thread, so you can also talk to each other further. Jordan, if you can leave us with something to ponder.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think being in a master's program, being in a PhD program, especially a program like MEIS for the master's, is something everybody should recognize, and it's hard to do it at the time, but there's an element of us that are kind of like the quote unquote like intellectual elite insofar as like we have the opportunity to just study this stuff. And I think it's like a waste to not do anything with the skills you learn. So what I would say, like any advice to people doing the program is, for me, it's taking this, anything I write in class and trying to turn it into an op-ed or a journal article or a dissertation chapter, etc. But it doesn't have to be that, right? It could be taking it and going to lobby the State Department. It could be anything, right? Going to work for an NGO. And I just think like one big takeaway that I had and that I think everybody should have is like appreciate the position you're in to kind of just study this stuff, because we're lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, you've heard me say this in class all the time, how lucky we all are to have the privilege of sitting and thinking and writing on a desk. That's really the case. It's really important. And then of course what you do with it is going to be consequential. Any questions for your colleagues, or do you want to think about that as well? Are you jealous that Kylie left George Mason?
Definitely. And it's funny to, I'm jealous that Jon gets to get criticized by people from the UAE government. That's pretty cool.
Ooh, he's being outed. I don't know. Okay, well, that's pretty cool. And the three of us, of course, when Kylie comes up to the capital, maybe we can get together for coffee or lunch or something. That would be awesome. Jon, any last words? Not last words, but last words in this podcast.
So I would say for anybody who's considering MEIS or anybody who's in the program is take advantage of the professors in the program. Because I know, if I had questions, I'd just call Bassam. If I, was, maybe struggling with something, I'll give, Abdulaziz Sachedina a call, or I'll, call Peter Mandeville and try to work something out if I'm having a scholarly, dilemma or something, or even in personal life. The community in MEIS was awesome. And in terms of because I know you're going to ask, do I have questions for Jordan or Kylie? Yes, the being criticized by the Emiratis is always fun, but I just want to thank Jordan and Kylie for when things like that happen. To be there, this is and you, Bassam, this is a community whereby we support one another, and we support one another to express our thoughts and critically analyze.
That's awesome. And I'm sure we all have gotten our share of criticism from somewhere that doesn't like what we are saying and what we're researching. And the important thing here is to be steadfast in what we believe in, and to support academic freedom all the way. I know that there will be more discussion of this at George Mason as we are pushing for a very important initiative titled what is it titled again? Discrimination and bullying in academia. It's not anti, it's about discrimination, bullying in academia, and how many of us have encountered that. And we can talk more for another hour about this. But let me just say that it piggybacks on what we have done 2.5 years ago, which are town halls on anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and discrimination in the name of religion. We had 2 town halls, and then this is the second iteration of it, except that this one is much bigger, and it includes, will end up including a couple of dozen, if not a lot more, institutions, units, centers, programs that deal with the Middle East and Islamic studies. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for more discussion of alumni profiles. And I hope that you guys can stay in the loop. And when you get too big and too smart, don't forget about us.
We won't. That was so sad. What a sad place to end off.
How could we forget about you, Bassam?
Yeah, we're just starting to laugh.
No, I mean, that's why I love to do these things. I love to be in touch because networking is going to benefit us all, and we don't all have to be on the same page, so long as we are in conversation and we have the same or similar goals in terms of advancing knowledge, advancing, questions of peace and justice and so on. So I hope that we continue to be in touch, and thank you so much for joining me. I know we've been trying to do this for 3 months now, and that's testament to how busy everybody is. So we finally nailed it, and I will use this starting point to move forward with alumni profiles. Thank you all so much. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Bassam. Good to see y'all.
Thanks, Bassam.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Take care.